Hey, good morning and welcome. So glad you're along. Boy, it's going to be a firecracker of a Tuesday today. It's 5 minutes after 8 o'clock on this Tuesday morning. And with me in the studio is Danielle Garbe-Reeser, and I told you she would be here. We've spoken to the other candidates for the Washington Senate seat that is available. So first off, Danielle, thank you for coming in. Good morning.
Good morning, Jim. Thank you so much for having me, and good morning to your listeners.
Yeah, pull that microphone nice and close. There we go. Glad you're along with me. A lot of people may not know about you, but you have strong statewide and local ties here in the Valley. And you were just telling me before we went on the air that the Reeser family is a big part of that.
Yes, so I am married to Todd Reeser. He is the fifth generation from the Reeser family to be farming here. And some of your listeners may know my father-in-law, Yancey Reeser, who was a Superior Court judge for 2 decades.
Yeah.
And his father before him was also a Walla Walla County Commissioner. So Todd's family has a long history of public service, and so does mine.
And that's really where we're going to go with this, because I had a chance to look at your resume, and I would hope the voters understand now that they have their ballots at home. It is a pretty impressive resume, and we could spend the whole half hour, but let's not. Let's start with where you were born, because it wasn't too far away.
Right. I'm originally from Moses Lake, and so very much rooted here in eastern Washington. My dad's family is from Yakima over many generations, and he and my mom met in Moses Lake. My grandparents were all there, so it was a wonderful small town, values of hard work and serving our country and our community that really led me on this path.
And then when it came time, are you a chief? Did you go to?
I am an MLHS grad.
MLHS.
Exactly.
And then when it came time to go to college, what were your choices?
I had a number of choices, and when my mom insisted I come down to look at Whitman, we'd heard from family friends about it, and I came and visited Walla Walla, and I just fell in love with the place. For a kid from Moses Lake, this was a big city. And in the 90s, even, I remember seeing merchants. I hadn't seen a sidewalk cafe. It was just a gorgeous town, and people at Whitman were so friendly. And
so you were impressed.
I was super impressed and continue to be. And luckily, I had a full ride scholarship that made it possible for me to attend Whitman. And it was really that education and meeting a Whitman alum from Eastern Washington, Ryan Crocker, that led me to think about a diplomatic career. I knew from my grandfather's military service that I wanted to serve our country. And hearing Ryan's career in the Middle East and around the world, I thought, if I could serve our country and help make it safer and more secure as a diplomat, that was something I really was excited to hope to get to do.
And this is something you did do. I want to find out how excited you were to be in Jakarta, but that's neither here nor there. So you went to Whitman, you graduated, your line of study was?
I studied politics at Whitman.
And after graduation and after being inspired by Ryan Crocker, who we've interviewed here in the station, you went into public service. So it is a big part, and you went into the diplomatic corps. Is that correct?
That's right. So I had a fellowship from the State Department that paid for me to get my master's degree in public administration, which is like a business degree but geared towards managing government and nonprofits, on the condition I joined the Foreign Service. And of course, that was what I had hoped to do, so was incredibly thrilled to be selected for the program. And I started that job on September 10th, 2001.
Oh, my God. That has to be a pretty eye-opening experience.
It was, Jim. Our training center was right next to the Pentagon. So the next morning, we were literally signing our oaths of office to protect and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And
there was
we
smoke.
got the news, and we had to evacuate the center.
Where did you spend? And you have spent time in various outposts, but for the most part, were you located in Washington, D.C.?
I ended up, so you usually start your foreign service career as a diplomat working at an embassy overseas. So I asked to be sent somewhere in the Muslim world, knowing that we needed to understand those issues and security concerns better. And so I was fortunate that I was sent to Indonesia for my first assignment. And then I ended up in D.C. after that, and I worked closely on Condoleezza Rice's personal staff for a year. I ended up in the Senate, in the White House 2 times, and my final assignment was at the Department of Energy. So I saw a broad array of issues across our federal government, and really enjoyed that work, but I missed home.
And you are hoping to apply some of those lessons learned in the State Department on the statewide level.
Exactly. Many of the issues that are facing our community today are global. So the coronavirus is a global threat. If we think about climate change, it's something that's happening around the world. All of our agriculture products have an international component in those markets. So I feel like that global perspective that I uniquely bring to this race will be very helpful to understanding the challenges we face, not just today, but that we could face in the years ahead. Similarly, understanding how the national government works at a time of national pandemic and crisis, part of what we're going to need to do is work closely with our national partners. And then being rooted deeply here at home, I understand what we need here locally and what Eastern Washington needs to thrive.
We'll continue our discussion with Danielle Garbe Reeser right after this. Don't go anywhere. Hey, and welcome back. It's going to be a hot one today here in the Valley. If you're just joining us, my special guest is a candidate for the 16th Legislative District in the Senate, Danielle Garbe Reeser. And a fascinating story to get started. We learned about her birth in Moses Lake and her college career in Whitman College and getting into the Foreign Service. And then after your diplomatic tour, and we only scratched the surface, there's quite a bit. We didn't even get to Bali, but you came back to the community. And did you come back specifically because you lost a family member?
Yes, that's right. And so when I was serving at our embassy in Beirut, I got a phone call one morning that my little sister had died. And news like that has a way of turning your entire life upside down. I came back I was supposed to go to Afghanistan after my tour in Beirut, and instead came back to Washington, D.C. so I could figure out next steps and be a little closer to my family there. And just thought before I went back overseas again, I'm going to do a job search and see, is there any other way I could still feel this commitment to service, but be closer to my family who are all still in Moses Lake? And so I started a search. And right about that time, Sherwood Trust here in Walla Walla was looking for their first employee CEO. Jock Edwards had been serving there for 2 decades, and they were recruiting. And I thought, how lucky would I be if I could return to Walla Walla, a place I've loved for decades. And the Sherwood Trust is such a special connection because it was established by the same family that funded the scholarship that had made my Whitman education possible.
So it was very serendipitous right at that moment.
Exactly. And really this full circle experience, right, to return and get to give back in some way the generosity that they had really invested in me. And what a gift to come back here to Eastern Washington, where I love, and to have this role in the community where Sherwood Trust is an amazing partner. Virginia and Donald Sherwood were such visionaries in thinking about how they could make a difference through their estate, and leaving $30 million in assets that I oversaw with the board and managing. And then each year we would need to make $1 million in grants in the community with wonderful nonprofit and government partners across Walla Walla and Columbia counties.
And it really is the lifeblood for a lot of nonprofits. I'm not saying that they pin everything on that, but if they pass muster and the Sherwood Trust gives them grant money, it is a big deal. And so for how long were you the CEO at Sherwood Trust?
Just about 4.5 years. So from 2015 until early this year, 2020. And really that role, as you said, it's a key investment tool in the community because Sherwood Trust really looks to invest in the places where we could build the capacity of the organization. Realize nonprofits are small businesses, and we weren't just giving money to be nice. We were doing it to be strategic. So if there were opportunities to help create jobs that would really transform the organization or invest in community projects that would make a huge difference, that's where we wanted to put our dollars. And
I'll just say, as a former board member locally of a nonprofit, there were quite a few hoops to jump through, but it was certainly worth it because we did receive grant money from the Sherwood Trust. So they continue to do good work in the community. The reason for moving on was a chance to run for the Senate?
Well, as I had been thinking over the last few years of how I could give back, Sherwood Trust was an amazing way to keep doing that. And I kept seeing needs in our community and incredible community partnerships addressing them on early learning, ending youth homelessness, a number of them where philanthropy could help, but we couldn't fix the issue.
Right.
I also saw how our rural communities were really not getting their fair shake from Olympia. And I think a lot of us feel a divide between the West and East in this state. And through philanthropy, I tried to bridge that, working in partnership with the Blue Mountain Community Foundation. We started a funders tour where we invited philanthropy groups from the West Side over here to see the amazing work our nonprofits were doing. And as a result, we attracted over $500,000 into the community.
So I'm interested, the feedback you received from these philanthropists from the other side, was it positive?
I mean, who doesn't visit Walla Walla and fall in love with this place, right?
Right.
So they were impressed by incredible work being done, the creativity it takes to work in small communities, and they voted with their dollars, right? They invested incredible grant resources across this district. And part of it was realizing they weren't investing before because they didn't know about what was happening here. So that role as being an ambassador of our region, of our nonprofits and the great work here is what I was doing in philanthropy, that I saw if I could play that role in Olympia and really be a champion for the whole 16th district, for Walla Walla, Columbia counties. It's part of Pasco, and it's all the way over to Prosser. It is a big district, that we need someone who can go to Olympia and really create the change and fight for the resources our communities need.
So let me see if I can get the story straight. From tiny Moses Lake to rather super cosmopolitan Walla Walla, and then off to Walla Walla and points around the world. I'm sure that you learned the value of networking, and are you incorporating that now for this run for the Senate?
And that is an important part of reaching out and talking to people about what I'm hoping to do with this race and what I think we would be able to do in Olympia if I'm elected. As part of that networking that we do is asking people for money. And that's not always the easiest part of campaigning, but it's one part of the job. And I've taken it seriously because I want people to know that I care about this district, that I'm willing to do the work it takes to run and to win. And Jim, today we just announced that our campaign crossed $210,000 in fundraising, a record in this district.
That's great. In addition to asking for money, you also have to ask for people's vote.
That's right.
We've got to take one more break. We're going to come back after this. It is 8:22, and it is a Tuesday. It's going to be a hot one today. With me in the studio, the very charming Danielle Garbe Reeser, who is a candidate for the 16th Legislative District in the State Senate. And we've already spoken to both of the other candidates in the race. Lots of stuff going on within the state, and I don't know your level of expertise, but there's budget, there's education, there is agriculture, and you know how important agriculture is to this region, yes?
Right. Yeah, we are a farming family, so it's very important to our family and has been in the family for over 150 years. So we know what it takes to be a good steward of the land, and we've been concerned about water resources and other issues. So on all of those issues, I have personal, deep experience, and I bring something that the other candidates don't, Jim. We just heard from Representative Bill Jenkins' ad talking about the work that he's done. He's been an excellent representative, working hard for us. But I have the advantage of being able to sit in the room and make change from the inside. Right now, all of our representatives from this district are Republicans, and they're working hard for us. We have a more conservative district. But that means we're not in the room where decisions are made,
in the
where
majority.
The agenda is set. Exactly. And so as we think about the issues you just highlighted, the budget, fighting for education, fighting for the things our farmers need. The advantage with voting for me is that I can sit in that room with the majority side and say, that's not how it works in Eastern Washington. We need something different for our communities, and I will fight for what we need.
I think that's a very cogent remark, and I don't find many ambassadors or diplomats who know about water rights and agriculture, so that's a plus there. You're going back into a clown car in the Senate because we've got a $9 billion shortfall, and we're not alone. Other states are hurt equally. Would you use the same or try to use the same financial expertise that you used for the Sherwood Trust job in Olympia?
First, I would certainly draw from my federal experience because I was part of federal decision making around the response to the crisis in 2008. So I saw what we did at that large national level. And then I looked at what we did here at Sherwood Trust as I managed, as we said earlier, a $30 million budget. And I had to really evaluate every nonprofit that came through the door and be able to read their financial statements, ask really good questions to get to the heart of the matter, and think strategically and fairly about how to allocate our resources. And that's the kind of experience and decision-making and thoughtfulness we'll need in Olympia.
The next big item, of course, most voters receive their ballot. I received mine in the mail. And there are quite a few people running for the superintendent of public instruction. Chris Rakedahl is the current is SSI or whatever they call him. How do you feel about schools? I mean, you have experience in southeastern Washington and a little bit in central Washington, but it always appeared to me, and maybe I'm wrong, that on the west side of the state they have more well-heeled school districts that may not face the challenges we do.
Well, and that's right. Things are certainly different in our district, Jim, and that's why we need someone who's grounded here locally, who's worked closely with our school districts, the nonprofits serving kids and our families, to be the champion for our region on education. I've been really honored to be endorsed by the Children's Campaign Fund, which had endorsed Maureen Walsh in her 2016 bid. That's the state's biggest advocacy organization for kids, as well as from teachers at the Washington Education Association and AFT. I think we all have a huge new respect. We already knew teachers were amazing, and we have so much more understanding of how critical their role is for kids and the tough decisions that our school superintendents are going to have to make as they are guided by science, by kids' safety, and by what will work best in our local communities.
I mentioned that Dr. Smith will be my guest tomorrow morning. It really seems to me, he just seems to project this, but I pick up that our district was very proactive, and now we're in a position where people are starting to think about maybe kids going back to school. Are you going to be governed by science or edict on how this decision is made?
When it comes to kids' safety, Jim, we have to put the science first so that we know we are keeping them safe, as well as the staff and the teachers at our schools. And I have full confidence that our local school administrators will be able to make those wise decisions. And if I'm elected, I would look forward to partnering with them to make sure that they have the resources they need to really thrive in their jobs, because we don't need Olympia telling us what to do. We need them supporting us doing what we know is best here locally.
Well, the majority caucus, certainly you would be in the room. Do you know any of these people? Have you lobbied in Olympia?
I went for one day to Olympia as part of a job shadow program with Emerge Washington. So I met a number of them and have been honored to be endorsed by Senate Majority Leader Andy Billig. Many people may not know that Andy is the only Democrat in Eastern Washington, but his district is downtown Spokane. So when they meet right now, he's the only person from Eastern Washington in that room, but he doesn't have that rural ag experience that I would be able to bring and share.
So you would be the second in the room
Right.
When it comes to that. And, hopefully that would be a good situation for you. I have no doubt from reading about you, you're willing to work hard. I guess I could never be a state senator because I have lobbied, and there's just so much goofy stuff going on. People come in, they have 15 minutes, you get a photo, you get a handshake or a elbow bump, and you sign some stuff, and people are coming to you basically saying, here's our problems and we need help. You understand this?
I do. And frankly, that's what I did at Sherwood Trust, right? I really saw our role as how can we respond to the problems in our community, and how can we be a resource to attract investments to this region, to help people solve problems, to get resources where they need to be. And it is hard to be a fair and objective person
Sure.
in that role. I've done it in the U.S. government for nearly 14 years, being balanced, working for both Republicans and Democrats. Here in the community, I cared if you had a good idea that would solve a problem. I wasn't worried about your politics. And I think that kind of common sense, strong relationship building, and fiscal responsibility is what we need more of in Olympia.
Yeah, we talked about networking just around our region, but I would imagine it would be important to network in the Senate and get some coalitions pulled together and some like-minded people to achieve whatever it is you're trying to do.
Exactly.
Now, the mail-in ballots are out, and when you go to the rubber chicken circuit and talk to voters, and you have to close, we've got about a minute and a half. What's your close?
Well, I've mentioned last week to a few people that the best advice I got from my dad was to ask for the job. So I want to be clear that I am asking for the job of serving as your next state senator. I'm asking you to hire me because I have the global, national, statewide, and local depth of experience needed to tackle the challenges we have today and those we might have in the future. I'm asking your listeners to hire me because I have a track record of working across the aisle and caring more about your good ideas than what party you belong to.
Well, from a small, inauspicious birth in Moses Lake all the way to the Washington State Senate, our time is up. My thanks to Danielle Garbe. Reeser, we'll be back with our last 30 minutes next.